This is Goku-san, DBZ, and welcome back. Part of a series where I show some of my game collection. On previous episodes, I did, of course, my Nintendo and Sega. This time is Xbox collection. This is most. There may be a few games stored away in boxes somewhere. So I just grabbed what I could find easiest. With that said, original Xbox first. And I chose music in the background from Soul Calibur 2, one of my personal favorite Xbox games. Speaking of, some of my original Xbox games I don't have a case for still. Okay, first up I have is a dual game disc. This is with Sega GT 2002 and Jet Set Radio Future, which of course, big fan of, obviously, that game. Also, I have somewhere my copy, I forget where I put it, of Bloody Roar Extreme, which is basically the same as Primal Fury, just CG cutscenes instead of anime cutscenes. Next we have, for any classic game player, Atari Anthology, which has like 85 original. Oh, wait. Oops. That's PS2. I'm not sure how they got mixed up with Xbox. Next up, we have Capcom vs. SNK to EO, which was, I believe, exclusive version of the game only to original Xbox. Next, we have Dead or Alive Ultimate Volume 2, which unfortunately I misplaced the case, though I still have the case to the original Volume 1. Of course, Dead or Alive 3, which I actually have 2 copies of. We have a Miss Revelation, or Miss 4, if you will, which is, of course, a classic puzzle game series done by Ubisoft. And of course, this game is the one music is playing in the background from right now, Soul Calibur 2. And there with awesome Spawn on the cover. Next we have, of course, based on the classic 80s Macross, based on the original first season Robotech Macross Saga, or Season 1 if you will, Robotech Battlecry, which is based on storylines and some original stories they added on top of it, of course, from the iconic first season. Next we have the last of the series, unfortunately, from Sega, called Panzer Dragoon, and of course this is Orita. And the first 3 games, or the first 2 on-rail shooters, and of course one of the most expensive games easily ever in Sega history, Saga. But the Panzer Dragoon series is honestly a lot of fun, and I highly recommend if you ever get a chance to play Orta, play it. Next we have the first of the classic Siberia third-person puzzle game series, which is actually really good. You can get now on PS2 and like 360 and stuff. HD re-release of 1 and 2, but this is the original game, because it was originally only released the first 2 games on PC and original Xbox. Next we have Midway Treasures 2, which Midway made a lot of great arcade games over the years. And this game specifically has games like Rampage and Mortal Kombat 2 and 3, or Vanilla 3, if you will. Next we have the original version of course, the classic Fable, which is one of my all-time favorite games. Next we have, of course, the classic, now all-time great first-person shooters, the original Halo Combat Evolved. Then we have a really good fighter, Mortal Kombat Armageddon. The last game of the old series storyline. And the only thing I have on 360 without a case is Wolfenstein The New Order, which is strangely enough 4 discs. Now on to games with cases. First, we have a classic sort of an action slash platformer game, which is interesting. Vex, which is actually pretty fun if you're into like action platforming type games. Actually, recommend you check out Vex. Price wise, it's a very reasonable price range. Next, we have an interesting racing game. It's made by some of the same people that worked on Hydro Thunder, and not being very original, called it Arctic Thunder. But, as you can see, you can actually use missiles and stuff while you're racing on snowmobiles, which is kind of interesting. And of course, it was also made by the same makers of Hydro Thunder, Midway. Next we have, which I've done a couple of gameplays from, which I feel is highly underrated or overly hated, and it deserves a little more respect than it gets. And that is Capcom Fighting Evolution, which was made around like 2002, 2003, where it was released in America. It had characters from Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Alpha, Street Fighter 3 series, Darkstalker characters, and of course, actually characters from Red Moon, which was actually a PC-only fighting game from Capcom, strangely enough. And this is really the only way you can really play with any of those characters. And the details in some of them is actually really good looking, in my opinion. For 2D sprites, some of the best art. And it's fun getting to play Pyron from Darkstalkers. And if you can meet some requirements, you can face, of course, Shin Akuma. Next we have, of course, Dead or Alive Ultimate Volume 1. Regular Dead or Alive 3 in-box, which of course, and I really do like the fact that the main theme is actually done by Aerosmith. I think is kind of cool. And one of the early Guilty Gear games, in the Guilty Gear now, quite a long-running series now, but it was honestly one of the first anime fighting games, because as you can see, actually it goes all the way back to the original PlayStation. So yeah, it's definitely one of the earliest. It definitely far predates games like BlazBlue, which gets more praise though. Really, I think Guilty Gear series deserves a little more praise than it gets, especially from a technical standpoint. Next we have a very unique fighting game. To say the least, it's not the greatest overall, but it is overlooked quite a bit, strangely enough. But it's an interesting fun game to say the least. And yeah, it was an Xbox exclusive. Next we have, awesome, happy to have this port of the game. And it has glitch issues, but far less glitch issues than, say, the GameCube version or the PS2 version. It's considered to have the most glitches out of all ports. And the Dreamcast is actually considered to be the best version of the game, the most arcade-perfect version, which, of course, I have, just not in box, unfortunately. And this is one of the few I was lucky enough to still have the original box for. Next up, batch of original Xbox. We have, of course, the classic Shenmue 2, which, of course, now you can get an HD re-release on Xbox One, PC, and, of course, PS4. It has like a cinematic movie from the first game. So it's a good way to speed you up if you weren't able to have the original game. Next, we have a pretty difficult game, which I did one gameplay of, and yeah, it's quite a frustrating, difficult game. And that is, of course, SNK vs. Capcom SVC Chaos, which is interesting. This was a crossover game actually done by SNK rather than Capcom, and you can tell from the art style, the sprite designs of the Street Fighter characters. Next we have arguably maybe the best Star Wars game of all time, in my personal opinion, Knights of the Old Republic. And of course, along with it, Knights of the Old Republic 2, which I love these characters. On the front there we have Darth Malgus, And of course there, Darth Nautilus. Next we have Street Fighter Anniversary Collection, which of course has arcade versions of Hyper Street Fighter 2 Anniversary Edition and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Next we have, of course, the limited edition, even though there are more copies of this in the original version of Halo 2. In many people's opinions, the best of the Halo franchise as a whole. And I definitely see where they're coming from. It's definitely a solid, really good game. Next, we have another good game, of course, from makers that did games such as Dragon Age and stuff. This was the predecessor, or really the one Dragon Age was based on. Another great game from them, but also has elements in it that reminds me quite a bit of actually Fable, believe it or not. And that is Jade Empire, which is a highly underrated RPG game, hands down. One of the best games I feel BioWare ever did. Yep, BioWare made this. And that's why I say, and you can see a lot of elements from this in the future Dragon Age series. Next we have Mortal Kombat Deception, in my opinion, the best Mortal Kombat game still to this day. Though Mortal Kombat X is definitely up there, neck and neck. And then you have, of course, the Collector's Edition, which actually has a disc that includes the original Mortal Kombat game on it, which is kind of cool. There were 5 covers of the Collector's Edition. I only have the Mileena cover. There was also a Raiden cover, a Baraka cover, a Scorpion cover, and a Sub-Zero cover. Personally, I like the Mileena one, but to each their own. And last, for original, Tao Feng, made by the makers of course, Mortal Kombat. Which you can tell that from the brutality and different elements in the game. It tried to be more violent than Mortal Kombat. In certain areas, I definitely see where they succeed. Okay. Next up, on to the 360 games. First we have Forza Motorcross 3. Never been a big Forza fan, but I found this for a really good, cheap deal. So, figured why not pick it up. People do praise it as a really good series, and like the top rival to, obviously, Gran Turismo. Many people feel this is by far the best racing game of modern day. Next we have, of course, a great puzzle platformer type game, that being Portal 2, done by Valve, which cannot count to the number 3, obviously. Next we have a game not really necessarily great, but I loved the case, which is one of the reasons I picked it up from GameStop. Next we have some, of course, I've never actually opened. I've kept it shut. Dark Souls 2, a Black Armor Edition, which is actually pretty cheap. Next we have, of course, for any Dreamcast lover, the Dreamcast Collection, which has some classics like Sonic Adventures, Crazy Taxi, Space Channel Number 5, a very overlooked Final Fantasy game, except, strangely enough, in Europe of all places, Final Fantasy XI, which actually still has servers running, because Maximilian Dude even recently did some gameplay. Next we have Lost Odyssey, a very good, a very highly underrated JRPG game in my personal opinion. If you ever get a chance, honestly, pick up Lost Odyssey. You can get it easily under $20. Not a bad deal. It's a 4-disc 360 game. After that, we have a very good game. Of course, I enjoyed quite a bit this sequel/reimagining, but Mirror's Edge is definitely a very good, very well done game. Then we have a not so very well liked game in Soul Calibur V, or Soul Calibur 5. For some good reasons, though I gotta admit that cover art is definitely really good. Next up, we have, of course, Super Street Fighter 4, the original version, which is really good. Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, which personally is my favorite version of the 4 versions of Street Fighter 4. Next, I feel somewhat doesn't get the credit it deserves, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, which is actually a game I very much like, and I like the gym system though. I understand why people didn't like it, in all honesty, but underneath it all is a very solid, very well executed fighting game, in my opinion, and I still occasionally enjoy playing the game, honestly. Next, we have a more recent game I haven't had a chance to play yet, though very much looking forward to when I do get the chance. Transformers, of course, War for Cybertron, which has gotten actually pretty positive opinions from several different game critics that I like. Well, except for one particular, named Yahtzee. But whatever. Next, we have Virtual Fighter 5, which, of course, unfortunately, is the last Virtual Fighter game, which I really wish Sega would get off their butts and make a new Virtual Fighter already. Next, we have the original Assassin's Creed game, which is a classic in my opinion. Sadly, it doesn't get as much credit as I think it deserves. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flags, which for a lot of people is their favorite or second favorite in the franchise. Another game that's often overlooked, strangely enough, is BioShock 2. Even though a lot of people love the first game, and quite a few people appreciate BioShock Infinite as well. Then we have the original Dark Souls, of course, in the franchise. Though technically, I guess Origins comes from Demon Souls. Of course, Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate, which is the best version of the game to play from past gen. At least until, of course, Last Round came out. Okay, got quite a few here. Next up we have Dead Space 2, which many people easily consider the best of the trilogy. And I understand where they're coming from. Dead Space is actually really good. Just know there's lots of blood and gore. It's very graphic when it comes to that area, which is why it's been banned from a few different countries. Next we have, of course, Fable Anniversary, which is the HD re-release of the original, well, technically Fable The Lost Chapters, if you will, which is definitely good, and eventually someday I'll try to do some gameplay from that. Then we have, of course, Fable 2, and this was the Platinum Hits version, but this also included on disc the DLC, which is awesome. And of course, next, which is a game I'm actually doing gameplay of right now on my YouTube channel, Fable 3, which I feel is very I feel not enough people appreciate the game, and I don't get the hate that a lot of people give the game. I think it deserves a lot more respect than it gets, unfortunately. Next we have Halo 3 ODST, which is highly regarded, though I haven't had a chance to play this yet. It's highly regarded by many Halo fans. It's one of the best games in the series. Next we have what personally I feel is maybe one of the more underrated games in the Halo series, Halo 4. And I like they tried to change some stuff. Now I haven't tried Halo 5 yet, so I can't really give an opinion on Guardians. But Halo 4 I think is really good. Next we have an interesting game, Kingdom of More or whatever Reckoning. I don't know why they have to have such like a long title like that. And this many people considers to be the best in the Sacred Trilogy. Sacred 2, which of course has an awesome side quest which you can end up in a video game concert, if you will, of music done by one of my personal favorite power metal bands of all time, Blind Guardian. Yep, Blind Guardian has a song in this game, which more than makes up for doing the side quest. Next up, we have, of course, from Square Enix, Star Ocean, The Last Hope, which is a pretty good game, honestly, a good, solid installment in the franchise. So some people definitely, I don't think, like the newest game in the series from PS4. Next, we have, in my opinion, two very solid, very good, somewhat very violent games, and that is The Darkness, and of course, The Darkness 2. If you ever get a chance to play the Darkness games, do yourself a favor, get it. The games are dirt cheap. You can get both games easily under $10. So definitely, give it a shot. It's a really fun first-person shooter, and it's a lot of fun. Next, we have probably one of the best deals for your money, and you will get tons of gameplay out of this from Valve. And that is a collection of Team Fortress 2, the original Portal, and of course, both episodes, all the extension DLC to Half-Life 2, which many people consider to be one of the greatest games of all time, if not the greatest, in a lot of people's opinions. Next, we have a somewhat also overlooked game, and strangely enough, a mature-rated game from Square, which is interesting, though it's still a turn-based combat system game, The Last Remnant. And if you honestly ever get a chance, try this game. Very good price, very good deal. And if you're looking for a pretty decent, solid game for a good, reasonable deal for your 360, get it. Next up, we have, yes, strangely enough, I have two copies of. Don't ask me why. And that is the full DLC version of The Witcher 2. Assassins of Kings, the Enhanced Edition as they call it. But this is the best version. If you're wanting extra missions and stuff, you will get it on this version. It's by far the best version to play. At least you're playing on console, and 360, I believe, is the only console that allows this other than PC. And the last two here of the 360, we have, of course, the original Titanfall, which is a solid game overall. It's one of the only games I've ever bothered to actually play the multiplayer, and I'm not a big fan of multiplayer games, as I think I've made opinion in the past. Titanfall, and I think maybe Destiny are about the only types of multiplayer shooters I've actually bothered to try online. Game of the Year edition of course, the first of the rebooted Tomb Raider games, which is very good. Heck, I even ended up picking up on like PS4 Digital Market copy of it on there. Also, I have quickly some digital games on my Xbox One, a couple of indie games like Limbo and other good platformers, Ora in the Blind Forest, Killer Instinct Definitive Edition. Okay, and here it is. First, of course, I recently showed this. Obviously, a collection of Rare Replay with Gears of War Ultimate Edition, Destiny the Taken King Collector's Edition, Final Fantasy 15 Deluxe Edition, Project Spark, Monster Hunter World, Borderlands, the Handsome Collection, For Honor, Red Dead Redemption, Sunset Overdrive, Titanfall, We Happy Few, Halo 5 Guardians, and also two games which are on their way, which I'm waiting for to come in, and that is a little game called Recore, and the other one is also an Xbox One version of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is on its way. That way I can record the story mode, because the PS4 version blocks where you can't record story mode, which is relatively, I think, very stupid, but whatever. That was Capcom or Marvel's decision. I'm not sure which one's decision. I'm suspicious of Marvel, but whatever. With that said, so look for in the future to maybe a play of the story mode of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. So with that said, I'll see y'all next time. And of course, in the future, I'll be doing actually a 3-part series on PlayStation stuff. It's going to take a while to get that together, since I've been collecting PlayStation since like 1996, I think. It's been a long time, all I know. See y'all next time.